Welcome to the Organizational Transformation Kung Fu Podcast with your hosts, Sandi Verrecchia and Jennifer Long.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Organizational Transformation Kung Fu, or OT Kung Fu as we call it. I am here with my co-host, Sandi Verrecchia from Satori Consulting in Toronto, Canada. Only she's not in Toronto, Canada. Hi, Sandi. Tell us where you are.
I am not in Toronto, Canada, where it's bitterly cold. I'm in warm Panama, where it's 32 and sunny every day.
And she is looking happy about that. I am
happy.
Jen Long from Own Up, and I am in Denver, Colorado, where it is a balmy 22 degrees. And I'm speaking in Fahrenheit while she spoke in Celsius.
Yet another difference between us.
Exactly. So do the math, everybody. So welcome to 2024. And we thought we would kick off the new year thinking about the organizations maybe from the outside in instead of the inside out on this podcast. And so we are having a focus today to talk about the customer experience and how important that is in terms of how you think about it and how you develop people to have an understanding about it and having a coaching approach around your customer experience, because we love everything that includes a coaching approach, because that's what we do. So we're going to kick it off with a guest today, and I'm going to pitch it over to Sandi to introduce our very special guest that we are very excited to talk to.
Great. Thanks, Jen. So I'm really, really excited to introduce Dan Coldwell. Dan and I have known each other for many years. He was 30 years in financial services as an executive and industry speaker. He has served as both chief marketing and chief operations officer in the company that he was previously with, now self-employed, working through this whole customer experience and helping organizations get better at understanding it. And so Dan is also a Hockey Canada high performance certified coach. And so he is, he really understands what coaching means from a sports perspective and has been able to apply that to the business world. So welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Sandi. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah. Welcome.
So,
welcome.
Let's
great to be here.
Let's start talking about the difference between coaching in the business environment versus the hockey environment. Really curious to see what the similarities are and what you bring from your hockey experience into the business world.
Yeah, it's I cross-pollinate between the two worlds, and I test because in the sports world things your success and failure happens very, very quickly. It can happen during the course of a week, whereas in business you tend to have longer timelines and you have business plans that last a year, and et cetera. And we get in terms of motivation, in terms of setting key productivity indicators. You get a sense of how they work, and I constantly test stuff in my sports environment before I bring it to the business world. And it can be. I deal with female athletes, elite female hockey players who all aspire to play at the university level. And to keep them motivated and at the top of their game requires myself and our staff to be on top of our game in terms of coaching, and a lot of similarities between the two environments.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, we're starting to talk today about the customer experience, so CX experience, as it's sort of known in the world of business. Why don't you tell us a little bit, Dan, about the customer experience and whether it's the same or different or similar to customer engagement?
Well, I think they lead to the same things, and you're looking for the same outcomes, and that is repeat business and referrals is really but they are different. Customer experience is the customer's overall perception of their end-to-end experience with dealing with you, whereas engagement is trying to involve your customers through in your business through communication and often it's like off product type engagement, like interactions with them. How likely are they to uh, give you feedback when you ask for it, and that type of thing. So they lead to the same things, but they are different.
So both important.
Absolutely.
So in this space, Dan, in terms of organizations, how is there a good practice around customer experience in this space? I mean, I always come from the inside out, so the outside in is always interesting to me, and I know that when I'm working with leaders in terms of strategy, in terms of that kind of focus in their organization, their AOR, and how that bleeds in. Do you find that executives have a good practice around customer experience, or some better than others, some industry better than others? Is there a trend or is
I
it
think it's
mixed?
emerging. It's fairly new. I think it started to come on the radar, in the last 10 years or so, because we're recognizing how important it is to growing businesses and how it differentiates us. Think that in terms of what type of business you have, if you sell your products on emotional benefits as opposed to functional benefits, then then it's critical for your success and to be able to compete moving forward. It's just the when we have you have 73% of people say that a good customer experience is what leads to brand loyalty. The numbers are just, something that can't be ignored. And so I just don't, I think that companies would like to improve their experience. They're just not sure how. They're just not
Okay.
putting they're just not like clear on the process. And it's actually simpler than what we make it out to be at times.
Well, yeah, because I think the thing that popped in my head when I first thought about it, and I want to kind of circle back on emotional benefits versus functional benefits to get some clarity
Yeah.
there. But I know that the one thing that we all know is that when we complain about businesses on social media, they're paying attention, right? And so that seems to be the thing that we're all kind of aware of is if I have a bad experience, I can always shout to the ether and they might actually hear it, right?
Yeah,
But
I
tell
would
me,
suggest you need to get out in front of it. You like if you do it properly, you can get out in front of that so that the voice of the consumer is going to be heard before they feel the need to go and speak that way.
right?
So what are some of the ways then that you measure this? So how do you get out in front of it, Dan?
Well, I think there's three simple steps, and the first thing is listening, is having a mechanism in place to listen at regular intervals through as many channels as you can, and that is getting feedback from your customers and through surveys, through whatever mechanism. I like reliable, consistent type of, and I think that if you do it properly, surveys are really fast ones are an excellent way to collect that. That would be the starting point. Um, you, I think that a really good way to kill a good, voice of the customer program is to ignore the insights. So the second phase would be being ready to act and act on those insights. There is so many really valuable, positive coaching experiences that come out of the feedback that you're getting from your customers, but it also identifies pain points, and how you handle those is really, really important as an organization, especially when you implement a program like this. And then with those first two steps, you're ready to transform your organization. And I think if you use the right metrics for your business, then this process can have massive cultural change and in your organization and help you to achieve your goals better than any other processes. Because I firmly believe that that culture, and this is part of forming a customer centric culture. I think that culture does eat strategy for breakfast.
Mm-hmm. That old saying, for sure.
Yeah,
I
100%.
received a survey today, Dan, for
Yeah.
for an organization where I had some framing done, and I was eager to respond because I had a terrible experience because they ruined the frame that was on the picture, but they bounced back and handled it brilliantly. So I went on to this survey and answered the first couple of questions, all good. Uh, and then it took me to another page where it showed that I was only 20% through my survey and I logged off.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
talk about surveys a little bit in terms of the mechanism, because like I don't have an hour to do a survey. And so
No.
how
Right?
are
And
they getting the
everybody's
feedback?
doing them. Everybody's doing
Right.
them. I get surveyed from my car rental company. I get surveyed from my airline. I get surveyed from my hotel. I get surveyed from my
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uber experience. I mean, it's like, how much of that can I actually do?
Mm-hmm.
There is survey fatigue, and I think that it depends on your business as well. And what's a couple of things that you've kind of opened up there, Sandy, is again, I'm coming back to simplicity. Make it as fast and simple as possible. There is, I see companies collecting so much information. I'm like, how are you actioning this? Like, what? It's nice to have that information, but what are you doing with it? If you're not going to do anything with it, if you don't have any plans on actioning it, don't collect it. And so really, the two questions that, for the most part, that I would like, depending on your business, but the two questions that I'm the most interested in is Net Promoter Score. So that's just it's a common metric that is you can benchmark from industry to industry within your industry, and but the one that I'm really like, that I think is very helpful, is effort, and changing your organization to really focus on making it easy for your customers, and scoring as such. And so just those are the two questions I want to know the answers to. Those are
So
those
effort
are the kind of
Interesting.
the
in terms of the company.
how easy was it? How easy was it to conduct this transaction? And if you measure it across your channels, you can identify pain points like quickly and
Ah,
easily. And
Okay.
and
So that's what
and
you
so
mean by
that's really
effort.
what you're
Okay.
looking for. Yeah, Sandy, you talked about the experience. That's the thing, is like, prime example. I believe that you can take somebody who is on a net promoter scale, who is a detractor, that would score you a 4, have a terrible experience, and if you handle it properly, you can turn them into an advocate, uh, by showing that you care, and dealing with their issue in a timely fashion. That when you asked them a question and they gave you feedback, that you were on it right away. It was important. And there is somebody, you no longer have the motivation to go on Trustpilot or Google and do a Google review that talks about your experience. You had a mechanism, you were able to have your voice heard, it was actioned, and you're like, hey, people make mistakes, but they really atone for it. Now you're an advocate. So that's we're missing out on all of this if we're not capturing, and having a good voice of the customer feedback mechanism.
Right. So there's like the immediate action, right? Of something's wrong. Let's deal with the
Yes,
immediacy. But when you think about it strategically, right? So collecting a lot of data and the whole data analytics end of this, what does that
yes,
require people to be prepared for internally in terms of um, managing the data analytics and actioning the data analytics? So when you're looking at actions, what's the frequency? What kind of structure is involved? That just feels like a lot of,
mm.
I don't know. I mean, tell me.
it it
Investment in people and
it does.
manpower and technology, or
Well, if people are our most important resources, and we constantly say that, like, then this is a really good mechanism to extract from the people who matter the most, and that's our customers, how they're feeling about their experiences. And it's I think it's a worthwhile endeavor to be able to capture positive coaching information from our customers, and just if by that's where we come in, is to help put this together, to help managers and help them have the material to provide a really positive coaching experience to continue to motivate people to provide a superior customer experience.
Excellent.
So in the coaching experience, talk a little bit
Yes.
about how that happens for companies. How do they set that up?
Well, so if again, it comes back keeping it simple, and if you don't know where you're going, then how do you know if you're going to get there or not? So you really, you need to plan out where you're going to go with this, with the information that you collect, and how you're going to action it. But knowing, having the people in place in order to, when the information starts to come and flow, that we know how we're going to handle that information and not let it sit for any period of time. And it's just having a plan, and knowing what a little bit of what to expect. We Certainly businesses aren't cookie cutter, and but there's a general roadmap that this is what you can expect. You can expect a certain percentage of your customers to respond when tell them you've got two questions to ask of them. You can expect that you're going to get written comments, and often cases, like in my experience, 70 to 80% of the written comments are positive in nature. Just knowing that that's going to come in, and preparing documents and dashboards that you can quickly flow that information to your managers, the coaches of your people, and where they can, on a regular basis, incorporate that into weekly coaching. And just, you've got some
So it feels
actual
like a
data.
feedback funnel, right? So
Yeah,
it's sort of
absolutely.
Absolutely
you're
is.
constructing a feedback funnel that says we've got a standard on, we're going to collect it. This is our standard around collection, and then we're going to create a
Yeah,
standard around how fast we move that information back to managers for
yeah.
actionable feedback and training or understanding or behavior modification around how we're showing up with customers.
Hmm.
That's exactly right. And the really, you want to share the really positive experiences in a group setting and celebrate those. And then when we get feedback we also have to action, we would handle that privately with like one-on-one coaching with individuals, and like that's one thing that, like, the bad reviews legitimize the good ones, as far as I'm concerned, and we really can't fear them. When you're dealing with the public, you're always going to have somebody that's like, let's not have too thin a skin. When you first launch these people, like if from a company perspective, you got to prove to people that we are so interested in catching people doing the right thing, not the wrong thing, and just keeping it as positive as possible. And yeah, there's some service gaps that are identified through your voice of the customer program. Get on those, but let's not make a big deal about the success stories.
Yeah.
That's
So I'd
that just
imagine the,
Yeah.
the recency and the sort of frequency of gathering the data is really important, because you can't wait 6 months to give a staff member feedback, and you can't wait 6 months to give an answer back to a customer. So how, from your opinion, how frequent should we be gathering the voice of the customer?
And so that's a broad question. Any feedback, any empirical data from your customer is good. And if it's once a year, so be it. I think ideally, if you're really serious about customer experience and improving it and changing your culture, then I would say weekly. It would be a good number, and it's interesting because we've and you might not get this down in Panama where the weather's perfect every day, but up here in Toronto, people start getting, like, we have data that supports people start getting less satisfied in around February. Winter starts to drag on, and you compare from year to year in the colder climates, people are cranky, they're tired of winter, and you can see those types of trends. Yeah, interesting.
Well, I
So
think service has gone way down since the pandemic in general. So from a
yeah,
strategic
yeah,
standpoint, doing something like this right now, right in 2024, would behoove so many businesses, because
Yeah.
it's just this feeling of, God, we used to have such higher standards around service, and it just seems like they slipped quite a bit. And everybody's allowed to have a bad attitude about things when they show up as customer facing that you just never saw before.
Mm-hmm.
I maintain that the post COVID, we still haven't. I don't think we've completely figured out the post COVID employee, the post COVID student, or the post COVID athlete. They are vastly different, and there's all kinds of statistics around. People, like, look at the airlines are kind of getting it under check, but they have, like, unruly passengers, for example, just a spike. That just
Yeah.
supports your point, Jen.
Yeah, I think people have just gotten unruly and they've decided that that's okay. Like, I'm
Yeah.
fed up and I don't
Yeah,
care anymore. So it's an interesting dynamic, but I feel like if you're going to manage that in a proactive way, that really
yeah.
listening to people's levels of frustration and figuring out what that's about is the only way through it.
It's funny you should mention, and again, it's understand, like, it's a tool, like, it's a tool. It doesn't define who we are, and like, we're dealing with the public, so we really, we need to listen to it, look at the pain points, look for the trends in the data and stuff like that. But we did I test surveys in my hockey environment, and you get, when you're not winning is like every single game, and parents get a little bit cranky, and the feedback that you get from parents is they tend to have more complaints in relation to how we're doing in the standings. And so when you ask them fundamental questions like, is your daughter learning? Is she enjoying coming to the rink? And would you refer our program, like, and do a net promoter? It's tens across the boards, and it's just like, it's funny how, when you ask the fundamental, when you really drill down, the noise that you hear is kind of negative, but when you really ask the fundamental questions, they're pretty satisfied. So you have to be able to spot those trends as well, and just you have to need to really drill down and understand the information of what it
Yeah,
really,
that's an interesting.
what does it really mean? Yeah, there was a product a couple of years ago that, like, we as I was saying, we measured, we believed that the easier you could make things in every interaction. So every interaction that you had with us, our goal is to make it as easy as possible for you. So if you were doing something that was high effort, then we would show you a different way of doing it, so that, because we felt that our data showed that the most satisfied people were the ones that used the self-serve convenience tools. It changed a fundamental belief that we had in our business, and that is that if we deal with people, it's not necessarily true. That wasn't what our data showed us. So at every opportunity, we tried to make it easier for people. And there was a new product that we were very excited about a couple of years back. It was called Deposit Anywhere, where you could take a picture of a check, and rather than having to walk it into the bank to deposit it. We were super excited about this product because it was gonna score us much higher on convenience because you didn't have to come in. Well, that product scored very, very low. And it was really, we were very disappointed. And so we had to start drilling down and getting some secondary information outside. And what it was is the first time you used it, it was challenging. The first time that you used the product, there was all kinds of hoops that you had to jump through, and it was harder than going in. But once you're up and running, it was a much more convenient. So there's a prime example of what does the information actually mean. And so you need to kind of do an extra drill down because like intuitively, the first data that we got back wasn't correct. And when you drilled down, you went, okay, this is why. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is work with people and help them. Don't just leave them to their own devices to do it.
No one likes startup friction. Yeah.
No.
We had that today.
Startup friction getting this podcast going.
That's right.
Did. Yeah. So is there a difference, Dan? Can you, this is a lot of B2C, right? Is there a B2B strategy on this as well?
Yeah, if you have customers, then their satisfaction doesn't matter. B2B, B2C, customers are customers. But again, I think that, and we talked briefly, if you sell your product on an emotional benefit, and that you're not just selling on price. If you're selling your product on price, then focus on price, and that's your value proposition. But for most businesses, there's an emotional, like security, convenience, that type of thing. I like who these people. If that's your value proposition, then yeah, incredibly important concept for and process for your company to engage in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would think there's a lot when you talk about emotional benefits of business. I think they don't have sometimes I don't think they're clear on what those emotional benefits are for some.
Because functional is so much easier, right? It's black and white.
Well, and you try and do both. You try and give them the world for nothing. That's it. If it's a salesperson, it's easy. It's just we're terrific and we're the cheapest on the street. So like that's not a good one. That's not a sustainable model.
No.
Yeah.
I'm curious because I know of companies that measure Net Promoter, and they give the score, whether it's monthly or half yearly or yearly, whatever, to their board, and they're working toward a number. But they don't really do anything else in the meantime. So as a customer experience coach, what would you do in order to help that organization really operationalize and get the really important information so that they can change culture? What would you do?
Well, I think that in order to get people to really pay attention to it and to prove that you're serious about moving the needle on experience I would start by building it into compensation and have that as part of a balanced scorecard for your individuals. And so that makes up a part of their performance. And that's when people see, if it's on a balanced scorecard, then it's clearly it's important. And so that would be the starting point. We leave with Net Promoter. We leave a lot of really good work on the cutting room floor because it's not just people like that fundamental question, how likely are you to refer to friends or family? But you can take that data, and if people score a 9 or a 10, they're highly likely to refer you to friends or family. That is a very good audience to do just that, to approach them about, if you're gonna approach people in your organization for your customers for referrals, that's an easy group to approach, and they say they would, and they're highly likely to do that. So take them up on it, and it's amazing how if you ask them the right way and possibly incent them, that is when you're looking at 88% of people using online reviews as a factor in making a purchase. That's super powerful. If you can bump up your whatever reviews program you involve yourself in, whether it's Google reviews, a lot of companies just see that those as like something that they can't influence, and you absolutely can. You can absolutely highlight if you leave people to their own devices, and you don't think that it's important, and you don't mention that it's important, you won't get a lot of people participating that way. But that's another way that I would get an organization to help embed it in the culture.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, and it
So
feels
Google
like
reviews.
yeah, and there's kind of a virtuous circle in there. And I just think about when you're in that, um, doing the surveying, so even when you look at like your Amazon reviews, or you look at a product review on a website that you think, okay, am I going to buy this? And you're actually looking at other people's comments. And then you can look at, do they respond to the comments? Which tells me a lot more about what I'm investing in and what I'm buying than just looking at the comments, right? Because you're always
Yeah.
suspect of, have they planted these? Have they filtered out the bad ones, right?
That's
Like
right.
who's in
Yeah. Well,
control of his
Skeptic,
data?
Jen. You're a skeptic.
I am a
you need
skeptic. I'm always a skeptic, especially about online experiences.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think Google is like, they've done a pretty good job of, you can see the legitimate ones. But the telltale sign, the telltale sign is the you want to see the bad ones. And we fear the bad reviews, but they legitimize the good ones. And if there's few enough, you can't be perfect across the board. But if and exactly as you said, Jen, there was a bad experience. People can see, is that reviewer, are they reasonable? They get to see their other reviews, and do they like anything? And like you get a feel for the legitimacy of their complaint, but also you get a feel for how the company dealt with it and their response. And yes,
Yeah.
I talk to organizations that tell me that experiences, all the things that they're doing to improve their customer experience, and great. And one of the first things I do is take them and show, like, they don't even know how to see their online reviews. I can't get to them, and so I'll take them and show them they're pretty surprised and then they don't feel that they can influence them. And yeah, you can highlight, get your advocates to speak on your behalf, and ask them, and just ask them.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, you don't even need to incent them. They're engaged, and they'll do it for you.
Well, and it feels like I'm thinking about this just from the customer service person's perspective, right? That getting this kind of information is validation of how it's going in their part of the business. It's also because I think you can get pretty disengaged fairly quickly, depending on, especially if you're an airline service person, or if you're in one of those industries where people are just like, but it creates this
Yeah.
virtuous cycle, right? Of not only are we going to give you the feedback, but from a coaching approach, we're going to give you the tools and things on how you handle it, and how do you learn from it, and what do you do with this, and that you don't feel victim, and that you're not just the wall that people are going to hit when they're frustrated or whatever, right? That the service mindset standard bearer person is a hard place to be. And this feels like a great way to internally really support and encourage and hold a mindset and a capability around a group of people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's said some really interesting things there, Jen, and it's helping. It's the coaching. It's showing people how to deal with it. One of the things, doing some work with a contact center, and one of the things that they tend to get, they're problem solvers, and they get people who things don't work and they're angry, and just being able to work with people to give them a process for dealing with someone angry, let's most of the problem is you just need to listen.
Yeah.
And
yes, and don't quote policy.
No, just
whatever
listen,
you do.
listen. So we just, like listen. Then there's a you've got that solution for them. You're listening to them, but they're not ready for it. They're still emotional. Don't give them the solution until they're ready for it, and let them talk it out. And there's that when wait, that pause, like let them finish their sentences, and that there's that pause before you kind of jump in. These little things, you add them all up, deal with the emotion, empathize, like something didn't work and it was
recognize the
embarrassing for
emotion.
them.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think part of one
and
of
that's
the things is we used to I train this as in communications training is your emotions are your communication, and when people are pissed off, it's they don't necessarily have the right language to explain what they're feeling, but the frustration is really the thing you're hearing, and that's the thing you want to acknowledge, and that skill set for folks around standing in people's emotions and hearing, putting names on what it is they're hearing, and understanding that people get to feel what they want to feel, and how are you going to help this person address this, right? Because
yeah,
this is a moment, and I think that's a huge capability when you've got really good customer service people, and they can get you out of your emotional place fairly quickly by hearing you and acknowledging you. And all it really takes is I hear your frustration, I hear your
yeah,
anger, right?
yeah,
And then that's
and
it. That's all you got to say. And then we're like, yes, please,
absolutely.
thank you. And what are we doing next? Yes.
Okay, I'm here to help.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
that one sentence just calms people down. And and we go back to metrics and talking about net promoter score, and we tell people, when you're dealing with someone who's like a 1 or a 2 on the net, and they are just such detractors. The nice thing is we're not telling them you don't have to make that person happy. You don't have to turn them into. It's nice if there's a process that you can follow that gives you a good shot at turning someone around, like Sandi with her framing experience. But you just have to make them ambivalent. You have to get them, from, if you know the net promoter score scale, get them above a 6, just so they're neutral. You don't even have to make them happy, just ambivalent. So that's just from listening and listening and empathizing.
So, Jen, you started talking initially about sort of the inside out versus the outside in. And so many of our organizations that we deal with, they have coaches internally, right? And so to put a program like this in place where there's added responsibility to these coaches to now coach to this, do you think, is it advantageous to have someone like you come in and coach from a different angle?
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's that apologies. It's that different. You mentioned it, the different angle and the different approach, and people like to hear different opinions. And it's hard for a manager week in, week out to be coming up with fresh material, and in order to continue moving the needle in the right direction. And it's hard, and it's to bring people in. It's just it takes a load off. They're very focused on their particular area, and again, we say that people are our most important resource. Let's prove it, and let's make that investment in coaching and making people better. We know what the dividends that it pays, so it is
Right.
worthwhile.
Well, and I feel like that when you make that investment and you maintain a level of mindset on service, on how you service and coach service, right? That
Yeah.
customer experience culture impact isn't just the business impact, but the internal culture is, if we're good problem solvers with our customers, we've got good net promoter scores, we start to believe we're good problem solvers as a business. And that
Yeah.
impacts how we start to see our own problems internally and how we handle each other internally. And I've got to say, there has to be a connection, right, of how this can impact an internal mindset around who you are and how you show up when you're faced with challenges, both internal and external.
Yeah. And that's it takes me back to that effort metric. Like that effort metric ties everybody in, internal, external, customers, and just if I don't help my associate, we're, as an organization, this is going to affect the consumer. It's going to affect the customer. So I need to do my part so that that experience is, again, I like effort, because it just makes everybody's doing what they can to make it easier for the customer. And if we can make it easier for each other, that is going to lead to a better, easier customer experience as well. That's the only metric that I've seen where you have IT departments concerned about doing upgrades, and that we're going to be down for a period of time, and that's going to affect our effort scores, because having to go back a couple of times to be able to access the system to check your balance, that is a high effort type transaction. So they look for different ways of doing things so that they don't, because your IT department tends not to, I don't mean to paint them with a bad brush or anything, but because they're not customer facing, they don't have the same, and this is a way of bringing them into the fold and making them everybody customer centric.
So
The
everybody
collection
owns
of
the customer experience.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, sort of as we wrap up, I don't know why every organization isn't running programs like this, right? Having a customer experience coach in there, surveying their customers on short surveys, not long ones, and really making it impact. But the proof is in the pudding. Do you have any sort of proof, Dan, that this works?
Yeah, there is. There's when I was at the last credit union that I worked for, we implemented a program. So it started with listening, and admittedly, we started listening and we scrambled to action. And we kind of we were kind of surprised at the insights, and so we scrambled to put stuff in place. But we did a good job out of the gate of setting targets. It took about 6 months for people to really start understanding, and we had where we used this. It was 12 retail locations, and we literally had 6 that were scoring below our target and 6 above. And we were able to go and deal with and coach those teams, because they didn't really understand the metric and they were afraid of it, and it was like, no. And we needed to sit down with the entire team, and with some positive coaching and reinforcement and understanding what it is and what it isn't, we were able to see those stores turn around. And at the end of a year, we only had 1 store that wasn't reaching its objective. And so, and we, while I don't know the exact number, it did translate into increased sales. It was because we didn't know how to capture that information at that time. It didn't know the exact number, but it absolutely did have an impact.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like go ahead, Sandy.
Go ahead. It ties right into the whole accountability conversations that we have, a lot, Jen, around holding people accountable, right, for their actions in this cycle, right? The positive and
Yeah.
the negative. So, yeah.
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 Yeah. And I think the big bonus and to kind of wrap us up and take us out, the big thing is, right, less churn of customers, less churn of customer service people, right, is a huge thing you're looking for when you're kind of measuring this thing out. Looking at loyalty, right? Loyalty is a big deal. I think that's an internal measure as well as an external measure, because these, I think, are interesting positions that have a lot of influence. But does it create too much grind internally, or do we, because we can solve problems, are we loyal, and are we engaged as employees, and are we loyal as customers to the organization? And I think some of that benefit back to the business, and some measure to look at is what kind of innovation does this kind of thing drive for the organization? What kind of innovation does it drive based on the insights that you glean when you actually are in conversations with the people you do business with? So, Dan, I want to thank you very, very much for making the time in chilly, frigid Toronto to speak with us. Sandi.
Thank you, Dan. Very enlightening. How can people get in touch with you?
You can reach me through Satori, through the Satori website. So that's Satori Consulting Inc.ca.
You can look up the CX Consulting /coaching page that is going to be live in a couple of days, but by the time this podcast will be absolutely live. So excellent. So thank you so much,
Absolutely
Jen.
live. Yeah, thanks. And everybody, thanks for joining us today, and share us with your friends, share us with people you like, give us some comments and some feedback. Follow the link about Sandi. You can find Dan, and we will talk to you again on our next podcast. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for listening. You can check out Sandi's website at satoriconsultinginc.ca. That's SATORI consultinginc.ca. And visit Jen's website at own-up.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.